Good evening and welcome. I'm going to call to order the Burnsville Planning Commission for Monday, April 22nd. Thank you everyone for making their way out on this rainy evening. Our first item is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda from staff or commissioners?
None from staff.
Staff? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the April 8th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Any changes or additions from staff on those?
No changes.
No changes. What about from commissioners?
Nope.
All right. It's been, well, before I asked, good work, good work. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item 3, which is a public hearing of Gerald and Suzanne Wood for a preliminary and final plat approval of a one-lot subdivision of Peace of Mind Addition variance and a conditional use permit amendment for an expansion of the building footprint located at 1900 Ames Drive. Ms. Arnold.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. So this item before you is an application to consider the expansion of a veterinary clinic in the I-3 zoning district, just off of Ames Drive and County Road 5. The architectural review tool was inadvertently left out of the Planning Commission packet on Friday. It has been provided this evening. So the site is a 0.71 acre lot. On Ames Drive and on the edge of the I-3 zoning district, neighboring a variety of zoning classifications of mixed use, some townhome developments in the R3A district, and some I-3 to the south and to the west, continued of the office and industrial park. The clinic was approved through a 1975 conditional use permit. It included surgery suites, pet boarding, and a lower level where an on-site veterinarian could stay overnight, though the space is currently used as pet boarding. Vet clinics are not permitted or conditional uses in this zoning district at this time. Therefore, the use is considered legal non-conforming. The applicant is proposing an expansion of the building of 51%, which does exceed the non-conforming chapter's maximum 50% allotted amount for an expansion of a non-conforming use, which necessitates a variance request in addition to the conditional use permit amendment for the building structure's expansion. So the subject site has not been platted, and the land use clearance of the conditional use permit amendment and the variance request does trigger the city requirement to plat the lot into a lot of record. The proposed plat adjusts the southern lot line as during a previous street reconstruction and realignment of Ames Drive, the right-of-way and the actual center line of the road was not accurate compared to the proposed lines that were given. So as from a survey, so the applicant has applied for a vacation of the right-of-way to maintain consistency in these boundaries of the actual 30 feet from the actual center line of Ames Drive. So that will go before the City Council by public hearing at the same time that this application reaches them. The expansion of the building provides for a new entry to the clinic and larger separate waiting areas for dogs and cats, a larger checkout counter, room for display of products, and 2 new exam rooms and accessible restrooms on the main level. The lower level was approved in 1975 to include space for an on-site veterinarian to reside in if care was needed overnight. The applicant has stated that the current use of the lower level is for mechanical rooms, and they do currently use it for pet boarding areas, and this is not proposed to change. The proposal includes an expansion to the parking provided with a carport with a new entrance within that to this lower level boarding. The proposal also shows the inclusion of an additional drive aisle and one-way traffic flow through the site to similar numbers of parking spaces, but to to better design it for their residents and customers to come. With this expansion, the trash handling will now be located adjacent to the parking lot. The building coverage on the lot is proposed to be expanded as well as the impervious surface coverage, but would not exceed the 5,000 square foot requirement for stormwater management. The service lot contains 14 parking stalls, 2 of which are located in the carport connected to that lower level boarding. Site design of the proposed expansion includes significant upgrades to the exterior building materials. Newer windows, entrances, and exits have been provided, including a back exit where someone could leave the facility through a back garden if they had just lost a pet at the clinic. The materials are consistent with ordinance standards, and the on-site trash and recycling enclosure is consistent with the materials of the primary structure. A condition has been added that at the time of building permit, revised plans shall be submitted to meet the requirement that fiber cement panel is not allowed 24 inches from grade, and a material sample board has been provided, and I've brought it this evening if I need to hold it up at any point later this evening. The majority of trees on the site are existing, but the applicant is providing new evergreen trees, evergreen shrubs, and then other overall shrubs and grasses to the site. The proposed landscaping plan exceeds our green space requirements, our parking lot landscaping requirements, and our building perimeter landscaping requirements. In the original 1975 approval, there was a condition that required 3 deciduous trees in the southeast corner of the lot. This is no longer relevant, and the condition will be removed as part of this proposal. Along with an amendment of the property CUP for the expansion of the structure and use, the request triggers a variance, as I mentioned before. So the variance is for an expansion of the building of greater than 50%. The math for that would be a 21 square foot variance to that allotment. So the proposed expansion is an upgrade to the site. When evaluated with our city's variance guidelines policies, there are 11 positives and 4 negatives. For the hardships and conditions, that policy is included in your background packet. Veterinary hospitals and animal kennels, as I mentioned, they're not currently permitted or conditional uses in the I3 zoning district. Over time, zoning ordinances change. At this time, the conditional use gives it the legal non-conforming status. That existing CUP approval was in 1975. The building was constructed the next year and has not changed since then. Different owners have used it over time, but the overall use as a veterinary hospital and boarding facility has stayed the same. So the CUP amendment is needed for the existing CUP conditions to be eliminated as they are no longer applicable. Engineering-related improvements associated with the proposal include the new driveway entrance mentioned on the site plan, some modifications to the parking lot, new curb and gutter, some retaining wall construction, grading of the site, and some service extensions for utilities. Stormwater requirements have been met as less than 5,000 square feet of the new impervious surface coverage were added. No fees were due with this plat. The city engineer did note that a city permit will be required for work within the right-of-way. I've also included the grading plan, the stormwater plan, and the utility plan, which I can come back to if necessary. With that, staff is recommending approval of the preliminary and final plat of Peace of Mind Edition, the variance and conditional use permit amendment for an expansion of the building, subject to the following conditions. So as mentioned before, there was a previously approved conditional use permit that will remain in effect to be amended with the exception of these 3 conditions of the exterior lighting in soffit, the landscaping plan, and the inside trash handling, as now it will be on site adjacent to the parking facility. And then at the time of building permit, or a new condition at the time of building permit to meet an architectural material requirement from our special requirements section that vertical panel siding shall not be allowed within 24 inches from grade. With that, I can stand for a question. We have our engineering consultant and the applicant and their architect is in the audience. This is a public hearing as well.
Right. Thank you very much. Very thorough background material and presentation. The only thing I had to research was deciduous, which thank you, Ms. Garros. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Arnold? Are there questions for the applicant? Would the applicant like to comment or? Welcome. Introduce yourself for the record.
Chair
And
and
you-
Commissioners, my name is Carl Robertson with Showquist Architects. Ms. Arnold covered everything very, very well. The one thing I'd like to comment on is, first time I saw the report was 2 o'clock today, and the last item on the 24 inches was new to me. I'm not quite understanding it, and I'm not sure if it actually even pertains to the materials that we have selected. So I would like to discuss that a little bit further rather than a blanket approval. I don't know how to hold the siding up 24 inches and have it not look really bad. I mean, I don't know what you want me to put underneath there, and so that just needs some more discussion. And the manufacturer's specifications are definitely different than that. They are 8 inches above raw grade and 2 inches above concrete, which is what we had planned on. So I would like to see further discussion. I'm not quite even sure of the term vertical siding, because this is not a vertical siding. But anyway, that's my only question and comment on everything else. But very good background, pretty much covered it. We've been talking, I first started talking with Deb 2 years ago probably on this project, so thank you.
And Mr. Showquist is a member of the St. Louis Park Planning Commission, correct? So
Yes,
welcome.
and it's Mr. Robertson, it's Showquist Architects, but
Oh, okay, oh, sorry. I do that regularly,
it
unfortunately, thank you.
happens a lot.
Okay, is, Ms. Arnold, would you like to comment on the?
Yes, I
question
can
raised?
comment. So the ordinance requirement of that stucco, synthetic stucco, or fiber cement panel, vertical panel siding should not be allowed within 24 inches from grade is a zoning ordinance requirement, not something that's included in the building code. So this is a requirement that has been maintained over time as part of our zoning ordinance. It's still there. Was not mentioned before, noticed at the last minute that the math didn't add up on that location.
But is this, and once again, I did not even have time to get into your ordinance to find where it mentions that, but when I see something like that, I'm thinking of hardy board. And this as a architectural panel is much different than a hardy board, and I was just, once again, like to discuss whether or not it's still relative. I mean, I don't understand the rationale behind it. I've never seen anything like that. In all of the zoning things I've done over 30 years, I've never seen a requirement to hold this material up. This actually isn't 30 years old material, but I've never seen the requirement to hold it up 24 inches. So that's why I'm just curious where it comes from, why, rationale, and all that. But I don't want to hold things up. It's just something, phase one is to do all the site work, and we're a ways away from doing the building. So we have plenty of time to talk about that and whether or not, kind of redesign a little bit on the outside to make that work, so.
I can try to address that because I've been asked that question multiple times.
I'm sure you have.
I've also asked the question multiple times why it's in there. I don't know. I've never been able to find out. I do know it's not a building code requirement. I believe that it relates to probably an old standard, mostly related to stucco, and having the old-fashioned stucco too close, to the ground, and then it getting wet and having issues. That's what I think that is based on. But you're right, I've not seen that in other ordinances either. But it is part of the zoning ordinance here, so.
But this product has a rain screen and it's fully sheathed behind it. I mean, it's there. We can go over it with building, but it's not an absorbent siphoning system at all. And like I say, the manufacturer's not going to say put it within 8 inches if they need it to be 24. So anyway, I'd
Certainly.
like to discuss it further. But
I
I
think-
understand that if it's part of the ordinance, it's part of the ordinance, and we have to respect that.
Yes,
until we-
yeah, and unless we can change the ordinance. But that is something that we can certainly look into for the panelized system. There's one of two things we could do. We could continue the public hearing to allow us to meet,
Please.
with the building official and come back next time
Oh.
and deal with that. Or do the condition, knowing that then if the panels, that you're proposing, if everything is okay and doesn't actually, fall under that, then you could use the
That's the route I
material.
would prefer to go. I really don't want to slow things down.
Okay.
Commissioner Benke?
Amanda, if I recall, Enterprise was a similar situation where they had an IFAS system, and in that case, the city council actually added the condition that the 24-inch stone be installed
Okay,
at the base of the building, all the way around, as a base, not necessarily as a building code issue. It was a zoning issue, and it was an aesthetic issue. I think that they're trying to keep my opinion is they're trying to keep the single product from being dominant all the way to grade. They're looking at the stone becoming a base on the building all the way around, or where needed. And essentially what they're saying is you're not gonna leave the panel 2 feet up, you're simply gonna switch to another material below that, either a veneer stone or a brick block, something like that.
Easier said than done. That's, as soon as you take something like that to grade, you've got frost heaving issues. In other words, I agree 100%. I like to see a building grounded.
Right.
If I'm building something from the ground up.
Right.
And the new parts of this, but at the same time, I'm also trying to dress up the facade of a 50-year-old building.
Right.
And I cannot go all the way down to the footing and build a brick ledge up.
I'm in the industry too, and I think a veneer stone would be appropriate here. I'm not sure what product was being proposed for the stone on the building itself, if that's.
It's a Nichiha.
Okay, and that product probably is allowed because they're also bring them down to within 2 or 4 inches of grade.
Right,
So then you don't need the ledge, but basically all they're saying is to not bring, my recollection of what council was to not bring the IFAS or the hardy panel or other panel type materials all the way to grade.
that is correct. I know that I've worked with other individuals, just recently on that Aloha Monkey building.
Yeah.
Same situation, and they needed to provide, something,
base.
a different base, correct.
Additional questions for the applicant?
Just if that solution would be acceptable.
I'd still like to have a little further discussion, but it's potentially acceptable. It's not quite the architectural lines, and once again, as a planning commissioner, I talk with my commission a lot about where do you draw the line without designing the buildings.
I sit up here and do the same thing, sir. Believe me, I bite my tongue more often than not, and everybody here knows it. But I guess at this point, it is an ordinance, a zoning ordinance item that I know has been brought up at council and could happen there again here too.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So, if there's no more questions, I'm going to open the public hearing. We're opening the public hearing at 6:47. If there's anybody who wants to speak, come forward and introduce yourself. Seeing none, we close the public hearing at 6:48. Commissioners, discussion. Or motion. Commissioner Benke.
Let me find it, there it is. Chair, I would have the planning commission recommend city council approval of the preliminary and final plat approvals for the one-lot subdivision Peace of Mind Edition. Variance and conditional use permit amendment for an expansion of the building, subject to the following conditions, of which there are 2 with 4 subheadings. I guess it's a total of 6, as listed.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I would just like to comment, as I live right across the street over there in the townhouses, so I really appreciate the investment and work in this property. I'm a cat owner too, so, we love people love veterinarians, so veterinarians. So, if there's no other comments?
I was just gonna comment the same thing you just did. I think it's great what you wanna do to the building. I just hope it works for you to meet the ordinance.
All All right, with that, we will move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Was the second, was that Commissioner Roberts? Thank you.
And that is on the city council agenda then on
Would be next week on Tuesday night.
Tuesday night
Week
at 5:30.
after next.
What's
It's a gap week.
Oh, it's a
May
gap
1st is
week.
a Wednesday, the week after next. May 7th, I think, I believe.
I usually ask that.
May 7th.
Okay, that concludes our agenda. We just have a set of updates. Is there anything from staff? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
We just
Ms.
have the agenda, and you will note that it is different, so just word up, we are again switching our software for
Wow, look at the
agenda
color.
management. Yes, so hopefully things will go smoothly. You know, we're getting these out, we're having training last week and this week, so this should be up and running for all of the commissions and council, I believe, next couple of weeks. I think the end of the month.
We'll be switching May 1st, so your next agenda packet will be with the new system.
We are crossing our fingers.
Yes.
It'll come out somehow.
Any other
And
updates?
just for other updates, the city council did approve the ordinances as recommended by the planning commission, and those were related to the temporary signs and banners, and then also the outdoor seating for food service businesses, so.
Sounds good.
And that's all we have from staff.
Commissioners? All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Going once? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.